and welcome to this little lesson on the Phrygian major mode or the Phrygian sharp third mode. Same thing. So what is a mode? Well, when I was taught modes, it was very confusing, and I understood none of it because it was, you know, impractical. I couldn't use it for anything. I just thought, who would come up with concepts, musical concepts that are completely, you know, irrelevant? Because this is how it's taught. If you have a C major scale, and you play that C major scale from the C and 8 notes up and down again, you will hear a major sound. You will hear the sound of the C Ionian mode, which is the same as the C major scale. If you play that same C major scale, same notes, from the D and then 8 notes up and back again, then you'll get the D Dorian minor, which is the second mode of the C major scale. In other words, you assign the role of king or home to the D note in the scale, and that if that becomes the basic note, then it sounds like a minor scale. And of course, you can take each and every note in the C major scale and do this with, and then you have 7 different modes. And how is this relevant? How is this relevant? Where is this relevant? When I'm improvising, when I'm soloing, when I'm writing songs, it's not relevant anywhere. As far as my experience tells me. Because in the beginning, when I started out, I practiced these modes. Okay, let's play the C major scale from the C and 8 notes up and down again. And then let's play it from the D. Let's play the E Phrygian. And the F Lydian. And so on, right? And I played them, but I didn't know how to actually apply that to anything useful. So, what is that? Is that modal concept even useful in any kind of way? Well, yes, it is. The reason why the C major scale sounds like the C major scale when I play it from the C, 8 notes up and back again, is because I'm really playing an arpeggio with the scale notes as passing notes. And this is why this is the way it is perceived to the brain. So when I play... See, now I'm putting emphasis on the scale notes because we go da 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 da. We focus on all the arpeggio notes, and the first note I play is kind of defines that da 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 da. It's the most basic pulse when it comes to music within human beings, because music comes from this place, right? It's not from the outside. It's created by what we like, by what we feel is pleasurable. So when I play the C major scale from the C up, what you hear is actually an arpeggio with the scale notes in between. Right? And the same thing goes for D. And if I play those notes, every second note from the D, I get a D minor chord. If I play them at the same time, so I take every second note from the root note I'm playing, I get that chord. If I play them together, you know, I get a C major chord or a C major triad if I'm just playing 3 notes. And that's why playing a scale from any one of its notes is going to sound like its mode, right? That sound there, but it has no practical value whatsoever. But what does have practical value is that each scale has 7 different sounds to it. And to achieve that sound, what you need to do is focus on the notes of the arpeggio of that mode. So for instance, if you're in the key of C and you're playing the C Ionian mode, which is just the same as the major scale, in order to produce that major sound, you need to focus on the chord notes of that C major chord, because that's what we have in the background. When we hear the C major chord in the background and the C major scale on top of that, played in a way where I focus and rest on the chord notes of C major, then I get the sound of the C Ionian mode. Right? So let's just try that. So this is the C. You know, there was like 3 chord notes there and 1 scale note in what I just played. Chord note, scale note, but chord note again, and then chord note. So by constructing lines that begin and end on chord notes, the chord in the background, I can create lines that sound major. let me just now create first a line or a couple of lines that focuses on the notes of the C major chord, which is C, E, G. You know, because what I do there when I play the scale up and down from the C up is really just play the arpeggio, as we talked about before, with the scale notes. That's what we hear. So when we improvise or create solos, that's what we want to do all the time. But we can't just go up and down the scale. How useful is that? You know, and then I'm playing the Ionian mode. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds very Ionian. I'm shifting to Dorian. It never becomes useful. Sorry for the... So, what we need to do is be able to produce this sound. But no matter what we play, and I can do that by starting on a chord note of C major. And then ending on a chord note, and then having the longer notes in between our chord notes as well. Right? So, let's just do a little test here. First, I'm going to do a couple of notes, a couple of lines in major. Then I'm going to shift to Aeolian, which is a mode within the C major scale. If you go 6 notes up in the C major scale, you come to the A, and if you play the C major scale from the A and 8 notes up and down again, you hear the Aeolian mode. This is also just a minor key or a minor scale. So that's what we call the parallel tonality. So C major is really the same as A major, same scale, or A minor, sorry. So if you have a song in A minor, it uses the C major scale, but with a focus on that A, that root note, and that A chord, that A minor chord, right? So I'm just going to play a minor line that fits the C major scale, or the C major chord. And then I'm going to play a minor line that fits the A minor chord. Minor again. Major again. Minor. Right? So in this way, modes are really a scale and an arpeggio in combination, with a focus on the scale notes and using the focus on the chords, the chord notes, and then using the scale notes as passing tones, beginning and ending each line you play on a chord note. So this brings us to the E Phrygian major. What is that? Well, you have the major key, right? C major right here. And you have chords. You have 7 different chords that you can use around that C major. And that's how we make songs. Right? So we have a chord progression. It begins and ends on C major because we're in the key of C major. But another very important chord within that key is the dominant chord of G, the 5th chord. If C is the king of the scale here, then if you go all the way up to G, the G note, so you go C, and then right there, the G, and you build a chord from this note by taking every second note in the scale, we go, you get a G major chord. That 5th step, that chord of the 5th step, is the dominant chord, and it's what comes before the C major chord every time we end the chord progression, more often than not. So if I have a chord progression, then you would hear that chord progression end with G and then C most of the time. So any song, just look at it, any song in major has that chord just before the last chord of C. We start and end our chord progression on C most often when we're in the key of C major. And just before the last C and the chord or the chord progression ends, we have the dominant chord in the end there. So we have, this is C, then E minor, then I could do F major, which is also a chord in the key of C, and then G major. Sometimes we put in the 7th. So we take 4 notes, and then we have the C major again. And if you listen to it, it really makes sense. And it makes sense in here, because that's where it comes from. So. The reason why that dominant chord works so well before the tonic, which is what we call the main king chord of the key. The reason why it works so well is because it has a special note in it. The third of that G there, if we write out the G major chord, we would have a G in it, and then we would jump to the B, and then we would jump to the D. We'd just take every second note in the scale from the G. Not A, but B, not C, but D. So we get G, B, D, right? Those are the notes that we play together. The third, which is this note here, because it's 3 notes, which are 1, 2, 3, so the B becomes the third. The third in the G major chord is just 1/2 step below C. It's right there. And this interval here between these two is a semitone, 1 fret. And that is the strongest interval in the human body. So when I go, you know, that is, it leads up to that tonic again. So when I go, that's the third. That is just below the C. So and that's a cadence that is used in classical music, in pop, rock, every single style of music. Right? Now, back in the old days when all this was created and people struggled to get some kind of systems to describe all this, and then we focused on the C. In fact, if you see a very old piano, it doesn't have any black keys on it. It's just the C major scale with white keys. And so we didn't really have a G sharp or a B flat or anything like that. We just had the C major scale laid out. So you could only play in C major. But we noticed that if we went and made the A in that scale, the king chord, we took every second note from the A and created an A minor chord. We played the scale across that, and we have a totally new key there. The C major, when the C major chord is king within that scale, then we have that kind of jolly feeling. It's light and positive, right? But when we make A, which is the 6th chord within C, if we make that the king, you know, that's why this is a circle. It's because there's not really anything here. It doesn't begin and end anywhere. It's just a circle of notes, right? And so if I make A the king, then I get a whole new emotional state as the foundation of what I do, soloing, songs, whatever. So I get a sad a way of creating a sad song, in other words, right? But then we want to have the same ability to play that dominant chord and have those cadences in the end of a chord progression. So I can go, right? We want that tension. And because if I just take the scale here as it is, then the G would be the note just before A, right? It would be the one that led up to A. But the problem is here that this is not a semitone. This is not 1 fret. This is 2 frets. This is a whole tone. So I have a problem within the A minor scale. We call that A natural minor because we have the C major scale, and when we convert that to a minor scale by focusing on the A, we call that an A natural minor. It becomes a harmonic minor when we push the G up, like this. We push it up 1 fret or 1 semitone to create a semitone interval between the G sharp and A. And why do we do that? Well, if I don't do it, this is how the cadence is going. This is how the 5th step, the chord E, sounds just before the A. And in the natural minor realm, it's a minor chord. So we go A minor, D minor, and then comes the dominant E minor. This is the chord we get when we just take every second note, and we didn't do that yet, right? We get an E minor. And And that doesn't fly real well because that's the whole tone interval between G and A you hear there. You get... And that is not as strong as... I hope you hear that. So we push the G up, but that gives us a totally new scale, because now we don't have... Now we have... Ooh, different sound. You know, it's a game changer, just pushing that G up to a G sharp. And we do that in order for us to be able to hear that cadence when we use the E. The E is no longer a minor chord. It becomes a major because the third in the chord gets pushed up. You don't have to understand every single thing I say here. You can return to this video again, look at some other stuff, then come back. So this is how we create the minor key. But we only change in classical music and in most other contexts, we only change the scale from A minor to A harmonic minor at exactly that moment when we play the E major, because that's how we are able to play an E major scale or E major chord, is by pushing that up, so we get the E major chord instead of the E minor chord. Right? So now we're ready for how this is relevant to the E Phrygian major, because we talked about how the C major scale has 7 different modes, and a mode is a combination of a chord in the background and then the arpeggio notes of that chord within the scale. You focus on the arpeggio notes within the scale and create lines that start and end on those notes, right? And that becomes lines that sound like the mode. Now, in the minor perspective, we could just stay on the E. So what happens if you stay in harmonic minor, in A harmonic minor, and we just keep playing that E major chord? Now, that would be, that mode, that sound, which is... That is, apart from the last note I just played there, that is the sound of the E Phrygian major. And we derive that mode by turning the C major scale into an A minor scale by just changing what chord we focused on. And then we took the dominant chord of that key, that A minor key, and said we don't have a lead tone there, we don't have a semitone between the third of E, which is the dominant of A, and the root note of A. And so we change the scale. So now we have a real dominant chord progression. We stay in harmonic or in natural minor. Right up until the point where we get to the dominant, which is now. Right? And then we go back to the... So that's the whole essence here. That's why, or that's how that E Phrygian major arrives. And of course, when you've been playing this, because you can just lay down an E in the background and play a little bit of F and some power chords of A. So you have that riff lying there, so you keep that same sound. And it's full of tension because it kind of leads up to the A, but the A doesn't arrive. So it's just tension all the time. So that's why it's very good to play solos over, because you can have a song in A minor, for instance, you know, symphonic, neoclassical, whatever. Whatever, right? And then comes the solo piece, and then instead of just playing over in the same sound, in the same kind of mode that you made the song, you can go, okay, here comes the solo. So it's kind of tension up there. It builds, you keep there. And once you get back, to the A minor mode for the verse or the chorus, it's kind of a release after being up there in the solo. So it's a genius way of creating a solo piece. So just imagine the solo going up, and then suddenly then you're back in the harmonic, you know, it's all the harmonies and the minor mode, and we're back home again without, you know, all that tension going on. So this is the story of the Phrygian major mode, also called the Phrygian sharp third. And it's the whole basis of my new program. So see you in another video or whenever we meet again. Bye.